appreciate everything you've done. I do want to say, because people have asked, North Korea, we imposed today the heaviest sanctions ever imposed on a country before. And frankly, hopefully something positive can happen. We will see. But hopefully something positive can happen. But that just was announced, and I want to let you know we have imposed the heaviest sanctions ever imposed.
China responded angrily Saturday to new sanctions the United States imposed on North Korea, maintaining they were counterproductive to efforts to halt Pyongyang's nuclear and long-range missile development programs.
China has slammed new U.S. sanctions against North Korea because they target shipping firms based in China and Taiwan. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Gun Chuan released a statement saying China resolutely opposes the U.S. imposing sanctions against Chinese entities or individuals unilaterally and based on U.S. domestic law. China has launched a strong protest with the U.S. Gun calls on Washington to immediately stop what he calls mistaken actions to avoid harming bilateral cooperation. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration announced on Friday that it's imposing new sanctions targeting 27 companies, 28 ships, and 1 individual. They include shipping and energy firms based in mainland China and Taiwan, as well as in North Korea. The U.S. accuses those entities of being involved in ship-to-ship transfers of coal, oil, or other products in violation of UN Security Council sanctions.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Friday what he called the largest ever set of sanctions against North Korea and threatened a phase 2 if the measures weren't effective. The sanctions target 1 person, 27 companies and 28 ships registered in China and 7 other countries with the intent of eliminating North Korea's illicit shipping and trade. They block assets held by the companies in the U.S. and prohibit U.S. citizens from interacting with them. China's foreign ministry issued a statement saying Beijing resolutely opposes the U.S. for enacting unilateral sanctions and vowed to seriously handle the issue in accordance with the law. The ministry also demanded that the U.S. immediately lift the sanctions to avoid harming bilateral cooperation in the relevant area. Saturday's statement was China's latest in a series of denunciations of any sanctions against North Korea not imposed within the framework of the United Nations. China, traditionally North Korea's closest ally, insists it has fully enforced existing sanctions against Pyongyang. China's trade with North Korea in January fell to its lowest level in nearly 4 years, the latest indication China has maintained pressure on the isolated country. Since last August, the U.S. has helped oversee 3 rounds of UN Security Council sanctions against North Korea. The pressure has not stopped Pyongyang from conducting more nuclear and missile tests. The new sanctions' effectiveness depends on whether they can successfully be implemented.
Today, the Treasury Department is announcing the largest set of sanctions ever imposed in connection with North Korea. This action targets the deceptive shipping practices that have enabled the Kim regime to fund its dangerous weapons programs. Our actions target shipping and trade companies, vessels, and individuals across the wworld who we know are working with North Korea's behalf. Specifically, we are sanctioning 27 entities, 28 vessels, and 1 individual, all involved in sanctions evasion schemes.
And the U.S. has limited leverage over many of the shipping companies involved in helping North Korea evade sanctions, warned Gary Samore, former White House coordinator for arms control and weapons of mass destruction. A lot of the companies working with North Korea are very small, Samore said. And they don't care whether they work with the United States. Jonathan Chancer, a former Treasury Department official, praised the new sanctions for addressing North Korean shipping, which he said has long been a gaping hole in the U.S. sanctions regime. The only thing missing is action against complicit Chinese banks, said Chancer, now with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. We know they continue to undermine our efforts to isolate North Korea. Until that step is taken, he said, North Korea will be able to operate rather freely in the formal financial sector.
Can you update on the monitoring of the China-North Korea corridor that is the lifeline for North Korea, which is not monitored by any international organization?
I'm not going to comment on specifically what ability we have to monitor things and what ability we don't, but I can assure you that we have a lot of capabilities.
The United States has announced its largest ever set of new sanctions against 27 shipping and trade companies, 28 vessels, and 1 individual, all involved in helping North Korea evade existing sanctions. The sanctioned shipping companies and vessels are from North Korea, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Panama. The U.S. hopes the sanctions will significantly limit the regime's ability to engage in already banned international trade, such as illicit coal exports. Through the sanctions, the U.S. aims to cut off the regime's revenue sources, which are funneled into the North's nuclear and ballistic missile development programs.
The United States will leverage our economic strength to enforce President Trump's directive that any company that chooses to help North Korea fund its nuclear and ballistic missile programs will not be allowed to do business with anyone in the United States.
President Trump has also warned of a phase 2 in his administration's North Korea policy if the new sanctions are not effective. Speaking at a joint news conference with the Australian Prime Minister on Friday, Trump said that if the sanctions don't work, the U.S. has to go phase 2.
I don't think I'm going to exactly play that card, but we'll have to see. If the sanctions don't work, we'll have to go phase 2. Phase 2 may be a very rough thing, may be very, very unfortunate for the world.
While not specifying the details of the possible phase 2 actions, President Trump added that he hopes the sanctions work.
With our Prime Minister, and he quoted you as suggesting that 70% of the benefits of the tax cuts go to workers. He's got a similar agenda he's trying to get through back home. What's the evidence to suggest that that flow through is there for workers? And secondly, on North Korea, the sanctions, you briefed him on that as well. Do you expect to have strong support from Australia in that initiative?
I do. So I've known the Prime Minister for a long period of time. He's trying to focus on a very similar to economic agenda to what we've done. He explained to me how he's lowered the corporate tax rate on the small and medium-sized companies and how he's focused to do it on bigger companies. And he congratulated us on our success, and hopefully that will show the success for him there. And we've talked about this statistic in the past. We believe that a major part of the burden of corporate taxes are borne by the workers. And then on North Korea, we had a very productive discussion on North Korea. He's very supportive, and we've encouraged him to work with us on sanctions in other areas. So it's very, very productive discussion. I know he's looking forward to see the president today.
On that modelling, Mr. Secretary, with the 70% dividend that goes to workers that you mentioned to Malcolm Turnbull yesterday, is that all in wage growth or some other dividend?
It's mostly in wage growth. All right, why don't I take 1 or 2 more questions, but I don't want to leave here without emphasizing, you haven't asked me yet, we are working on Russia sanctions. I can assure you that is in the process. I will be back here within the next several weeks to talk about that. But again, I just want to emphasize, I think, under Section 241, okay, we did deliver both the unclassified and classified report, and as I've repeatedly said, we are working on sanctions as a follow-up to that. So why don't we take the last question?
Related to election meddling, sir? Is that what you mean?
We'll continue to look at election meddling. I might just add, we are closely working with the FBI on them giving information as it relates to the recent suit. And as appropriate, we will look at sanctioning individuals from the information they had. And I would also just comment, we already had sanctions against one of the very significant people that were on their list. Didn't change anything. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your help.
The Russian sanctions, are they having anything to do with North Korea? Or just, as Steve pointed out about the election?
Again, let me just say quickly, again, as it relates to North Korea, we're looking everybody the same. So the ability that we have under North Korea is not differentiated by country. We've done over 100 sanctions under our Ukraine and Russia abilities that we've done since the president's been in office. We will continue to look at those abilities, as well as the authority we've been given under CATSA, which I think you know had huge bipartisan support, and election meddling. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.